Alright, welcome back everybody. This morning it started with just some practice and some prep work. I went ahead and safety wired the flop tube to the fitting, thinking I was going to leave it that way and just stick the thing in as an assembly. This was back when I still had every intention of using that bracket that I made. But things are going to change by the end of this video. But I figured I'd leave this part in, just anybody curious about the safety wire part, how that goes. You can also see I got the book open in front of me there, the reference guide. I needed to be able to adjust my torque value. There you go, close up my safety wire. Needed to be able to adjust the torque value for torquing that fitting on using a crow's foot, which changes the mechanical advantage on the torque wrench. There's a formula in there, helps you figure out what it's supposed to be. Anyhow, here I am fitting it back up again and looking at that bracket, and it still had free play in it. Not a lot, but enough. And my concerns are still the chance that that flop tube breaks free somehow. And I know plenty of other people have dealt with this already and don't have an issue with it. I'm sure I'm overthinking it, but I've seen enough of these kind of fittings with sealant in my normal work life come loose and bad things happen. So right now I'm attempting a different kind of bracket. Thought I was onto something with this one, but in the end it ended up with the same problem. It still had a little bit of wiggle and free play in it, and I'd still have to work around putting it in after the fact and getting rivets in there. None of them were ideal. So we're going to leave voiceover mode here in just a second, and Shop Tim will give you an update on what the plan is. Little live update from the shop here. One of the viewers recommended or suggested TIG welding to hold this fitting in place. I had made this bracket that was going to go on here to hold it, but after mocking it up with the hose and everything else, it still had just enough wiggle room that when that thing's flopping around, I'm still concerned that it could break that sealant loose. So I reached out, I found a local welder that is willing to give it a shot for what I think is a reasonable rate. I know how to TIG weld. I do not have a TIG welding setup here in the shop, and it's been long enough that since I've done it that I wouldn't want to try something on fairly thin aluminum. So I'm going to bring this down to him here in just a little while and see if he can't weld this to this side of the plate. Even if he can't seal it all the way around, I mean, if he can, that would be great, but if he can't, it's not the end of the world. There's going to be plenty of sealant on the back side of this plate when I put it into the rib that I don't have to worry about it leaking. What I'm concerned about is I want it to hold this in place so that the flop tube can't break this loose and cause it to move around and leak, and later on when I go put the actual fuel line going to the airplane on this side, I want to be able to tighten it down and torque it without worrying that I'm going to break this loose and spin it inside the tank. Seems like a lot of effort for a bunch of what ifs, but I don't want to open this tank back up and deal with this thing leaking later on because it broke loose. So had I had this to do again, I might decide against the flop tubes after everything I've read online about the tube itself getting stiff after a few years and needing replacing and all kinds of other stuff. But I've got it. I'm fairly committed now. We're going to go through with this and see how it turns out. So I will follow up with an update video as soon as it's done. Alright, so back to voiceover me. The viewer with the suggestion was Brian Culp 9597. He said TIG weld it to the spar. I assume he meant to do what I ended up doing with it. Anyhow, moving on. While I was waiting for the welder to become available, I went ahead and continued with the prep on both of the tank skins. The first thing you end up sealing is going to be the cap, fuel cap rings, which you see me putting in and final drilling right now. And then I got to take them over to the drill press with the countersink bit and countersink both of them. There you go, took you over there for the second one. So that gets sealed first, and then the fuel drain gets sealed. And then after that, you move on to the tank stiffeners, and then after that, it is the inboard ribs. The outboard two ribs are done after that, followed by the rear baffle of the tank, closing everything out. So to get that drain on there, I just used a transfer punch that was the correct size for the hole to hold it centered for me, and then I just lined up the holes in the drain in an orientation that pleased me and drilled them to the skin. I don't need to machine countersink the drains because they already came that way. I found some nice aerodynamic covers by, I think, JD Air. I'm probably going to order at some point online, and they'll go around those drains to give them a little aerodynamic kind of feel, as well as a set of them for my fuel vents later. So in the midst of all of this, my work light for the little power table there, the base broke. I do love having a 3D printer and access to different designs, so I went ahead and 3D printed a new base, and the light is back in action. So repairs aside, I spared all of you the misery of watching me deburr all of those holes, front and back, as well as scuffing all of those lines where everything is going to get sealed later. And now you're back with me for the dimpling part. It's always gratifying, especially when I'm not making bonus holes that would be really bad in the fuel tank. So this is the right tank, if anybody's curious. I still have to do all of that prep work to the left tank. Did not feel like going there tonight, so that'll be a tomorrow project. Little cleanup with some acetone, because I still had a lot of residue on there from when I scuffed up the tanks. Didn't want that building up inside the dimple as I do this other side. And just had to be mindful not to try and do that very back edge row that goes to the baffle, because those are already machine countersunk. Probably be really bad to try and stick a dimple die in there on top of that. And that's it. Right skin is all prepped and ready to go. It just needs to be cleaned up. So moving on to the stiffeners. Same action. They all had to be deburred, and then scuffing the mating surface that's going to get glue. And now just going through and dimpling them all so that they'll sit on the skin where they go. And then we're going to do the same thing with all of the ribs. They've already been scuffed. I used a pretty aggressive Scotch-Brite wheel on the drill press to scuff those, and then I used that same wheel in a hand drill to scuff the lines on the skin. I figure you can't get too crazy. There's no going overboard as far as scuffing, so the sealant's got something really good to grip onto. There I was trying to show you a little sneak preview of something that got welded up, but you'll get a better look at it here in just a few minutes. Anyhow, all the holes got deburred. Some Scotch-Brite got run over them again just to make sure everything was good and clean, and then just run them through and dimple them all. In the midst of all of this, my little power screwdriver I got from Japan a long time ago that I was using for deburring the holes decided to die on me. I have ordered a new one from Amazon. Hopefully it'll be here tomorrow. I'm using that little handheld screw gun to do the same thing. It's on a very, very slow revolution. It's only going 1 or 2 turns for each of those holes, so same thing, just not as convenient of a form. So as I'm getting everything kind of set up, it's starting to get a little overwhelming. I decided I should probably break out one of the fuel floats just to make sure I've got a good understanding of how that mounts, how it seals, make sure that little ring that I made to go in the baffle to relocate one of them is going to work for me. I might have made it a little smaller than I probably should have, but I think it's still going to work. I should have plenty of edge distance for the rivets that need to go through there and into the rear baffle. Now I am trying to lay out where the vent pickup is going to go, as well as my fuel return line. I mentioned before I'm leaning towards going with EFI setup for this plane. If so, I need to have a return fuel line going to each one of the tanks. So I'm putting those lines in now, even if I don't end up going that route, just so I have them. So the one in the middle of the rib is the vent line, and that's roughly the location Vans shows it should be. And that one more forward is going to be for the fuel return. And then that is going to go through a tube and get dumped into the second bay so it doesn't aerate the fuel coming in. And hopefully that all works out. None of those are at risk of moving like the flop tube did, so I don't need to worry about any kind of welding or crazy brackets or anything like that. So should be good to go. Just more deburring and fit up, and now we're going to go back to Shop Tim for an explanation of what happened with the welding. All right, end of the day. Well, I guess we could have done without that. Perhaps I need to put you guys on something a little more secure. Running out of room quick. There's parts everywhere right now. Oh, bear with me, bear with me. There we go. Okay. You look a little sus there. All right. End of the day. It has been a long day. I got, if you've watched the video up until now, you'll see that I've gotten all of the parts prepped for the right tank. I've got to duplicate a lot of that effort as far as the cleaning and dimpling goes for tomorrow on the left tank, but I need to go get some degreaser, wax, paint prep, whatever, to clean all of this stuff up. I'm hoping at least tomorrow I can get the fuel caps sealed in along with the drains, maybe even the stiffeners. I don't know, we'll see. I leave again Monday for work, so I'm hoping I can get the tanks both to the point where the inner ribs are sealed in. That might be a lofty goal for the weekend, but we'll see. Anyhow, what happened with the TIG welding? If you saw any of this while I was moving parts around, awesome, but I found a guy that said he could TIG weld the fitting for me, and he did. So now what I have is a fitting that is TIG welded just to that plate. So I can take the hose off, take all this off. So this is not attached because this gets added after the fact, and the hose itself can go on once it's in the tank. So what I've got now is a fitting that is welded on to this plate. The plate is straight, it is not warped. He couldn't get in under, which is fine. I'm not worried about completely sealing it. I'll put a smear of sealant around it, and then this whole side is going to get buttered and sealant anyways before it goes on there, so it should be just fine. But with that welded like that, now I don't have to worry about the flop tube breaking the seal loose at any point, no matter what I do with the plane. I also don't have to worry about later on in the build, when I actually add a fuel line going from here to the engine. When I torque this down, I don't have to worry about how I'm going to hold a backer on this, because if you put the jam nut on here and try and hold the jam nut and torque this down, well, the jam nut's just going to break loose and then this thing can turn. So way better than the brackets. I wasn't happy with them. They had too much free play in them. I tried a couple attempts, so I think this is going to work out nice. In addition, while I was there, see if I can find the part. I already showed you guys in the video, but I had him go ahead and weld the tool hole in the outboard rib. This one's going to get covered by a doubler plate. All the other ones in the other ribs are going to get, yeah, you can't even see them, they're all covered by doubler plates. This one was the only one that was going to be left open. Vans recommend sticking a big rivet in there and sealing it, which I did order some rivets for it. But since I was there and he was doing the other work, he went ahead and just threw that in both of those ribs for me. So it should work out nice. Hope you've all enjoyed to this point. I'm going to go ahead and post this video, and yeah, we'll get back to the voiceover part. Alright, so just some shop cleanup here. I will try and get some more videos out of what comes next. I did get an email from Vans, which was kind of interesting, saying I might have received a laser cut part and they're sending me a replacement. I went and looked. I'm pretty sure mine wasn't, so I guess more to come on that. Update y'all when I know more. I'll leave you with some final photos, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave some comments below, ask some questions. They've definitely been helpful, and I will see you all on the next one.